This is World News in 5 only on El Phoenix Radio, and today is Thursday, July 30, 2026. Good day, everyone, and welcome to World News in 5 on El Radio Phoenix. I'm Luis Isaac. Thanks for joining us as we bring you the biggest stories from the United States, around the world, Latin America, and the Caribbean, plus business, weather, sports, and of course, our dumb ass of the day. Let's get started. U.S. News, our top story this morning, centers on rising tensions in the Middle East. The United States has launched another round of military strikes against Iranian targets after recent missile and drone attacks on U.S. facilities in the region. Officials say multiple Iranian military sites were targeted, as Washington warns it will respond to additional attacks. The conflict continues to raise concerns about regional stability and global energy supplies. Back in Washington, the Senate Judiciary Committee has postponed its vote on Todd Blanche's nomination for U.S. Attorney General. Senators are seeking additional assurances before moving forward, making the nomination one of the most closely watched political stories of the week. On the economic front, investors continue watching inflation closely after the Federal Reserve held interest rates steady. Treasury yields climbed to their highest levels in years as markets reacted to concerns over inflation and geopolitical uncertainty. World Watch: The Middle East remains the world's biggest geopolitical concern. Jordan says it intercepted several Iranian missiles, while additional strikes and drone attacks have been reported across the region. International leaders continue urging restraint as diplomats pursue negotiations aimed at preventing a broader conflict. Across Europe, firefighters continue battling dangerous wildfires in Spain and France. High temperatures, dry conditions, and strong winds have forced large-scale evacuations, with authorities warning that the coming days remain critical. WAPN America and the Caribbean report. Now let's turn our attention to Latin America and the Caribbean, where today's headlines span politics, public safety, the economy, and hurricane preparedness. Mexico. Mexico continues strengthening security operations against organized crime following several high-profile incidents in the northern states. Federal authorities announced additional military deployments in key trafficking corridors, while President Claudia Sheinbaum's administration continues balancing security initiatives with economic priorities. Trade remains another major focus, as officials work with the United States on border commerce, manufacturing, and immigration cooperation. Mexico remains America's largest trading partner, making these discussions critical for both economies. Guatemalan authorities continue efforts to combat human trafficking and illegal migration. Government officials say new technology and increased regional cooperation are helping improve border security while maintaining legal commerce. Belize's tourism industry remains strong this summer as resorts report healthy visitor numbers. Officials are also monitoring tropical weather across the Western Caribbean as hurricane season enters a more active period. Honduras. In Honduras, lawmakers continue debating economic reforms designed to attract investment and create jobs. Public security and gang violence remain among the country's biggest concerns, while infrastructure projects continue with international support. El Salvador continues its nationwide crackdown on criminal gangs. Government officials say homicide rates remain historically low under current security policies, while critics continue raising concerns about civil liberties and due process. Nicaragua remains under international scrutiny over political freedoms. Meanwhile, the government continues highlighting investments in roads, energy, and agricultural development as it seeks additional economic partnerships. Costa Rica continues expanding renewable energy initiatives while maintaining one of the strongest tourism sectors in Central America. Officials also announced new conservation projects aimed at protecting rainforests and marine ecosystems. Panama traffic through the Panama Canal remains steady despite continuing concerns about global shipping disruptions. Canal officials say water levels have improved compared with last year, helping support international trade. Cuba continues facing widespread electricity outages, fuel shortages, and inflation. Rolling blackouts continue affecting businesses and daily life across much of the island. While many families struggle with shortages of food and medicine, the government says additional fuel shipments are expected in the coming weeks, but economists warn recovery will likely take time. Dominican Republic. The Dominican Republic continues enjoying one of the strongest tourism seasons in its history. Hotel occupancy remains high, Cruise traffic continues increasing, and officials say new investments in airports and infrastructure are supporting long-term growth. Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is closely monitoring tropical weather, while emergency management officials encourage residents to review hurricane preparedness plans. Utility crews continue strengthening the island's electrical grid, though many communities remain concerned about reliability during severe storms. Haiti's humanitarian crisis remains one of the region's most serious challenges. Armed gangs continue controlling significant portions of Port-au-Prince, limiting access to healthcare, education, and essential services. International peacekeeping and humanitarian organizations continue working to restore stability and deliver aid. Jamaica continues promoting tourism, while security forces maintain operations against organized crime. Officials are also investing in infrastructure improvements ahead of another busy tourist season. Bahamas. The Bahamas continues preparing for peak hurricane season, while tourism remains the country's largest economic driver. Officials say emergency shelters and evacuation plans are ready if tropical systems develop. Trinidad and Tobago energy exports remain central to Trinidad and Tobago's economy as officials monitor global oil and natural gas prices. Economic diversification also remains a priority. Colombia continues peace negotiations with armed groups while security forces maintain operations against drug trafficking organizations. Economic growth and rural development remain key priorities for the government. Venezuela recovery continues following recent earthquakes in northern Venezuela. Thousands remain displaced, while reconstruction of homes, schools, hospitals, and transportation infrastructure continues with support from international aid organizations. Guyana remains one of the world's fastest-growing economies thanks to offshore oil production. Government officials continue discussing new investments in roads, healthcare, education, and housing as oil revenues increase. Suriname continues seeking foreign investment in mining, energy, and infrastructure, while working to stabilize public finances and encourage economic growth. Ecuador authorities continue a nationwide crackdown on organized crime and drug trafficking. Security remains especially tight around major ports, where officials are working to reduce cocaine shipments destined for North America and Europe. Peru President Keiko Fujimori continues introducing members of her new cabinet while outlining priorities that include economic growth, mining investment, public security, and improving government efficiency. Bolivia political discussions continue over economic reforms, fuel supplies, and constitutional issues. Demonstrations have decreased in recent weeks, though analysts continue monitoring the political climate. Chile recovery continues after severe winter storms triggered flooding and landslides across parts of the country. Emergency crews remain focused on rebuilding damaged roads and assisting affected communities. Argentina continues implementing economic reforms aimed at reducing inflation and encouraging investment. Financial markets remain closely focused on the government's fiscal policies and negotiations with international lenders. Uruguay continues reporting stable economic growth and remains one of South America's leaders in renewable energy, digital government services, and institutional transparency. Paraguay's agricultural exports remain strong, with soybeans, beef, and corn continuing to drive the country's economy. Officials are also pursuing new international trade agreements. Brazil's presidential campaign continues to intensify as candidates travel across the country discussing inflation, crime, environmental policy, and economic development. The election is expected to dominate headlines throughout the coming months. Money and market-s oil prices remain volatile as traders closely monitor developments in the Middle East. Higher energy prices continue influencing inflation expectations around the world, while central banks remain cautious about future interest rate decisions. The Federal Reserve's decision to leave interest rates unchanged has kept investors focused on upcoming inflation and employment reports that could shape future monetary policy. We either watch. Extreme heat continues affecting large parts of southern Europe, increasing wildfire risks across Spain and France. Officials are urging residents to avoid outdoor activities during peak afternoon temperatures. Meteorologists are also monitoring the development of what could become a strong El Niño event later this year, which may influence weather patterns and agriculture across several regions worldwide. Sports World Major League Baseball returns with a full slate of games today, including the Yankees taking on the White Sox, the Cubs facing the Cardinals, and the Mariners visiting the Dodgers. Tennis fans are also following the Mubadala CTDC Open, one of the final major tune-up events before the U.S. Open. Dumb ass of the day today's dumb ass of the day goes to the driver who decided that checking a phone while sitting in traffic wasn't enough and allegedly started watching videos while creeping through rush hour traffic. Remember, arriving a few minutes later is always better than not arriving at all. Please put the phone down and drive safely. Those are today's top stories. I'm Luis Isaac, and you've been listening to World News in 5 on El Radio Phoenix. If you enjoyed today's broadcast, like this video. Leave a comment, share it with your family and friends. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another edition of World News in 5. Thank you for watching your world, your news in 5 minutes.